the completion of our EOGs and end of course offerings for the end of this year. So it's a really changing dynamic for us. We're waiting on some official state word about state testing. However, what I do know is state testing must be offered in person. So there's not going to be a remote option for this. And we're still held to the fact that we need to test all the students at a grade level on a particular day. So all sixth grade or third grade will need to come in and get their testing done on a specific day, which poses some interesting challenges for us just from a space standpoint, and then also a completion. Traditionally, what Greensboro Academy has done just to complete state testing would be on the final Thursday and Friday. Well, it would be the week before the last week. We would bring in our students and complete the testing in the morning for all of our students and hold our kindergarten through second grade out in the morning until the second half of the day. They can come in and traditionally the second half of the day. I don't know that that's going to necessarily meet our needs this year for a number of different reasons. Not the least of which is we are going to want as many students as possible to be able to come in and feel comfortable coming in to take the test. In order to do that, what we are thinking is our in-person students will meet with their particular classroom, and then the virtual students at the grade level will also get an additional classroom for themselves to take the testing. So we're not going to be kind of mingling cohorts of students, if you will, while that's taking place. Really what it is, however, is a drain on the space that we have available. And also looking to try to complete testing if we need to, and provide separate settings, and all of those kind of things. It's a little bit of a logistics challenge for us. And we've come up with a proposed calendar to allow for this. Now, what this would essentially mean is third through fifth grade testing on 17th and 18th for reading and math specifically. And our sixth through eighth grade students would be fully remote for those 2 days, which is, once again, a little bit suboptimal, but it does provide the middle school wing of the building to then house additional virtual students for each grade level, and then also provides a space for the separate settings to take place. For example, third grade reading, we have at a minimum, this should be about right, 11 separate settings. There will be individual settings. We need 11 different testing spaces throughout the building in order to make that happen. Flip side of that coin, we would then reverse that process at the tail end of the week, so 6th through 8th. And then our third through fifth grade students would, in fact, under this proposal, our third through fifth grade students would get recorded lessons and not the live instructional piece.
Is that the 20th and 21st?
Correct. That would be the 20th and 21st. That's right. So we would basically transpose 3, 5, and 6, 8 in that manner. Now, clearly, there's really no great way to do this. I spent some time with the principals, with a few of our local principals, just discussing our options. And there are certainly some options, but none of them are particularly enticing. So we tried to, I guess in the way I would put it, we tried to convene the option that provided the most benefit with the least drawbacks. And there's plenty of benefit and drawback to go around. What we did like about this particular model is it would allow for our kindergarten through second grade students to be completely unaffected by testing. So their classroom, we would have to make some alterations, meaning they couldn't get on the computers. Our specialist teachers would in fact have separate settings. However, our K-2 students would be able to come in each and every day for the full day and be able to complete their normal schooling. So certainly a benefit. The other reality of this one is it doesn't make nearly as much sense to alter the K-2 classrooms just because the seating is not appropriate to a middle schooler or our older students. So we would be tearing down classrooms at the end of each session if we were to go with the K-2 piece, and it just seems a little bit of a needless move. Obviously, the downside of this particular model is some of our tested grade levels would in fact be getting some a reduction in the amount of live instruction time, but to offset that, we also know that our older students are capable of doing independent work at a wanted to protect those folks. Now, one of the challenges of this particular model would be science, which is 5th and 8th grade. So it's only 2 grade levels. In my recommendation, and what I would propose is bringing in 5th and 8th science so that we can have them in the building. And then, in our current model of operation, all of our other grade levels are fully remote on those Wednesdays. So the board would need to certainly grant approval for us to bring in those students if we so chose, or if we could come up with an alternate plan for that.
Just to clarify, bring in students the 19th and 26th.
That is correct. Well, the 19th certainly for testing.
Right.
What we're hoping for, however, is to really end this school year in a way that is, a springboard into hopefully something far, far better for the 2021-22 school year.
The bar is low.
The bar is set interestingly low. But one of the things we've done historically is had field day and potentially a cookout. And because we're no longer able to send students to with carpools to offsite locations with the same degree of confidence we've had in the past, we really wanted to make that final Wednesday of the school year that special day where we could really embrace the students, bring them in, and have a wrap up to the school year that will hopefully send us off on a really positive note. We couldn't do it on Thursday, the 27th, if for no other reason than we have our 5th grade promotion and our 8th grade graduation. And then the 28th is a half day of school, which is our final day as well. So, if we were granted board approval for all of this, we would certainly petition the board to allow for all of our students, all of our in-person students, to come back in on the 26th to be part of a celebratory.
And the 5th grade promotion, the 27th, is going to look different.
It will look different, yes. It will be housed on location, but what we'll have to do is make some alterations to the normally we bring out all of our 5th grade students and have a ceremony with parents present. We're going to limit or kind of stagger that to allow for all of the homerooms to be recognized and all the students there.
Okay.
Or not. Go ahead.
Right now, it's scheduled to be live streamed.
Live stream.
Exclusively live stream?
Yes,
Oh.
because summer numbers.
Or live stream.
Or live stream. Correct the minutes there.
Let me correct the minutes on that one. Melissa, I'm hoping you're getting
Yes.
definitely live stream. Live stream seems like the right way to go.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, I mean, certainly some shifting, and again, the majority of this, obviously, from an EOG standpoint of just trying to accommodate and get data right. I mean, for the most part, because it's not being, explain that to us a little bit. It's not being required, or it's not being reported, or what's the?
Well, we're still waiting on absolute clarity on this. What I do know for 100% certain is schools will not be held to the normal 95% participation requirement. That's been verified. I do know that the federal government has allowed for waivers to be put in place. I do know that North Carolina has submitted a waiver. Now, my understanding is that waiver will go back to the General Assembly for final approval or whatever that process might look like. And then we should have a greater level of clarity about the year-end testing will look like. My guess would be at this point, well, we already know 95% participation is not going to be in place. So for families that choose not to have their students come back in for state testing, and once again, that's grade 3 through 8, we would certainly be okay with that. We're not going to force anything in a situation that we do not feel is safe. But we certainly would like to get as much testing information back as possible. If for no other reason, then next school year becomes critically important for us. That one of our primary missions here is to secure the learning for all of our students, and this would help us springboard into the 2022 school year with that information. And so a lot of this schedule, the proposed schedule here, would be constructed around trying to provide the safest possible environments for people to be able to come in.
Okay.
Basically, I wanted it.
Yes. Understood. Tiffany, any question on that? Jennifer, on the line, any questions based on kind of that proposed schedule amendment as we're kind of looking to maneuver and shift, being the least disruptive as possible, I think, and still trying to accomplish, what we need to do. Anything, Tiffany, from you? Yeah. Yeah. Jennifer, anything from you by chance based on that information?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. All right. Very good. Appreciate your work. I know that's a lot of effort and moving parts trying to get those pieces, the puzzle pieces to fit together. I'm sure, that was a team effort, group effort to pull that off or to try to get that together. So thank you for that.
Undoubtedly, the deans will be through.
Well, we knew that. That's where I was going with it, but I pulled off at the last minute for going directly to that.
Kind of gentle, I understand. So we are fully enrolled as of Thursday. Moral focus virtue for the month is compassion. Greensboro Academy is fully staffed. And we're actually looking to source and hire for 2 teachers and residence positions. So interviews are underway. We're anxiously awaiting that process so that it is essentially pre-hiring 2 positions. Upcoming events, we have a staff PD on the 19th, which also happens to be our 5th of the remote learning days that were required by the state of North Carolina. That day in particular will be used it will truly be a working day for our staff members. We have a couple of Lexi and Dreambox, which are 2 new curricular blended tools that we will be using, but we have professional development provided by the companies that day. And then we also have additional support for our staff as we look to solidify our curriculum tools for next school year. So that will be a taxing day and a day long. And then our progress reports will come home with our students on April 26th. So that's round out my report of questions.
Any questions?
I do. Can you go back to, you said you have to hire 2 teachers, correct? What's the grade levels of the teachers?
Well, so the teachers in residence are, there's no particular spot for them. So what NHA allows us to do is hire 2 teachers in residence, which then are essentially pre-filling positions for potential openings that might come down the road. In all likelihood, we could try to get a case certification just to provide the most the broadest level of support that we could. And then if we've had 2 TIRs in the past, both of them have eventually been placed. So Mrs. Barrow in 5th grade science and Mrs. Bullard in 5th grade ELA. So they didn't eventually become placed. There's also the possibility that they can serve in other NHA schools within a but it's essentially once again just pre-hire. We don't have available.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Good question and good clarification. Thank you for that. Any other questions, board member questions for Doug on the report? Melissa, before I toss it over to you on the board funds report recap, let me go back for a second. I think this mask tends to suck the brain cells like right out of and so I meant to do this at the very beginning and I apologize. But I did not want it to go unnoticed that of the announcement from last week from our principal. So there's much more to come on that later, but I didn't want to go through a meeting without at least certainly recognizing and again, thank you. Doug doesn't do it justice and we'll try harder to say that, in the coming days, but nonetheless, thank you. And certainly will be missed but at the same time, have a great time of reflection and celebration for your time here. So thank you. Thank you for that. Good segue right into the board funds report, Melissa. I don't know how else to do that.
So we have, I think your board funds report starts on page 7 of your board packet, and it looks like there's a little over $46,000 left for the board to use towards future resolutions.
Great. Thank you for that. For that report. Any board member questions for that on the board fund report? If not, we will move into the Boosters Leadership Team report. Ms. Holly Winslow.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
I'm
thank
going to use my best teacher voice. If you can't hear me, then Doug will have to bring me. By way of update, we have two more Chick-fil-A fundraisers, one next week, and then the one in May. We are working very diligently to decide and obtain not the right word, but fill open chair spots for the leadership team for next year. We have several. We're losing some families. They're graduating on. So we have several spots that we need to fill. We filled actually today, we filled several key spots, which is really exciting. The leadership team as a whole has older students. So it's really been our focus to look at families with younger students. And so several of our new members have younger students, which is super exciting. We are also working with Mr. Howard and the deans to make this field day, this fun day that Mr. Howard alluded to happen. As you all know, we did no fundraising this year. We cut our budget. So we did leave some money in the budget for end of the year stuff in hopes that we might be able to do a thing or two. So the boosters have about $4,000 to spend. Unfortunately, that will not cover fun for the whole school. So I would like to ask the board to partner with the boosters and match up to our $4,000 for that day, so that we have enough room in our budget to provide as many fun things as we can possibly help to provide that day, since we've been able to do so little. I honestly, we're still pretty early in the planning, so I don't know exactly what our costs are going to be yet, but I can't imagine that we can't cover it with that kind of money. Then, as a second request, this one's a little bit more unusual, but this has been nothing but an unusual year. The boosters are asking if the board would be willing to give us up to $1,000, possibly not all of it, but up to that amount, to help with an 8th grade dance. Normally, the boosters sponsor a dance after graduation here at the school. Because they cannot be at school, they are incurring additional costs in a location to have something special for these kids. Many, obviously, like every year, who have been here their whole educational career. So those parents are willing to pay for things, but if we could ask for $1,000 to help them cover the cost of a location and some of the other expenses they would not normally incur, that the boosters would normally cover, which again, we don't have the funding for, unfortunately. So those
Sure.
are my two requests.
Okay, very good. It's difficult to have a virtual dance that's fun.
It's about, nobody wants
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
So-
That's probably my kind of dance, but it's not for 8th graders. And remind me, the field day of the activities, what was the date again on that?
That would be that Wednesday.
The 26th, the last Wednesday. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. No, I listen, I think, to me, and I think I can speak on behalf of the board, the board funds are there for a reason. They're there for unusual circumstances and times. And if we're not in them now, I don't know what possibly is. So I would certainly be in support of that. I have that, I think, recorded and written down correctly for the actual action item. So Jennifer, any, and you may not be in a position where you can speak, but do you have any questions on that? If it's silence, I'll take that as a no, but any questions from Holly on the booster report?
Booster all the way, Donna.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that report, Holly. I want to circle back. I skipped, apologize, skipped over a piece of the calendar, the proposed calendar, I think is what we're going to look at, Doug, as well as maybe the all-important dashboard.
Oh, all important dashboard, absolutely. And by the way, let me say that I think most of the students would be happy if we had a virtual dance if I were attending. However, since I will not be in attendance, I think we're good to have it in person. So moving right along, I'll start with the board packet, Melissa, and I'll go into the interim assessment reports. So this is a comparison. The assessment or the interim assessment report are really the North Carolina check-ins that we take 3 times throughout the year. So we've just completed our 3rd. This is actually an overview of the 1st and 2nd in comparison. You can see the percentage, and these are essentially what this is a probability matrix. So we're looking at the percentage of students that would score a 3.0 on the state test in all likelihood. And certainly we want those numbers to be just as high as possible. These numbers are actually compiled from the service center and then kind of put into this format. The great part is the deans and I have this information. We've had this information for quite some time. We actually spent today going over some of our check-in 3 information so that we can utilize that before the end of the school year and in effect some change. Really, probably from an overview standpoint, the part that we would want, and this would go down to the graph at the bottom. Essentially, what we want to do is kind of move the tail over, so we want as much green as possible, and then the gray bars that are there are kind of the projected bars, if you will. So if you skew things to the right, it means that you have better probability outcomes. And really looking very strong. ELA in particular, which this is the first time in the history that I've been at Greensboro Academy that language arts has outperformed mathematics, but one of that is very typical in most schools. Our math scores have always surpassed our ELA scores. This year, not the case. And I think part of that is just the specificity of mathematics in terms of skill development. And given the format that we've been operating from within throughout this year, and certainly at the tail end of last year, I think it would be safe to say that we're still kind of making up some of those gains, specifically from mathematics, but we are making up the gains. ELA, they tend to circle and overlap a little bit the skills. So what we see is the strong foundation has been able to kind of weather some of this format change in a little bit more effective way. So I guess what I would want the board to know is A, we're very aware of the data, and then B, we're actually utilizing that in the real time in order to make sure that we're meeting students' needs as we move forward. Now, also included on the management report or the agenda for us was a retention update. So really, traditionally, Greensboro Academy do not have lots of retentions every year, but every year we have a handful of retentions. That students, and the way I would put it is, there are a handful of students that for many, many different reasons, that the retention is in fact the gift of the year. And so it's not something that we take lightly, and we certainly try to be very well aware of how we can better support our students so that retention is maybe not that best outcome. Where we stand right now, though, in our middle school, there would be, these would be possible retention situations, and we still have nearly a quarter of the school year to go. So, these numbers can be altered. So I'll give you maximum numbers, and then we'll kind of, see where that shakes out at the end of the year. Middle school, we might have potentially of up to 5 students. 3rd through 5th grade is something more along the lines of 13 students. A lot of those numbers are inflated specifically by the Read to Achieve legislation and the fact that 3rd graders must achieve a certain level of proficiency. And then in our kindergarten through 2nd grade, which is really when retention takes place, that's the greatest likelihood. We would have potentially 16 students. And once again, the lower grade level you go, the more likely that is. And once again, we're always looking for it to be the gift of a year. So that is just a snapshot. Those numbers are actually slightly higher than we normally have from year to year, which should once again surprise probably just because of the circumstances we found ourselves making ourselves, wading through. The last tidbit I want to go in before I kind of discuss our proposed calendar for next year would be just some of the proposed changes to our parent and student handbook for the 21-22 school year. So without getting too far into the weeds on this, let me just say that there are some really good changes coming down the road. One of them is specifically with our academic excellence and student support. So a multi-tiered system of support. And this is kind of a reconceptualization of intervention, special education, and classroom core instruction in a way that really provides for a meaningful whole. The other really positive part about this is that it really looks at the whole child. So there's an academic component, there's a behavioral component. And I think an emerging area within the needs that we see are that social emotional learning piece. So this process unifies all of the procedures that we have within the school in order to best support students and to really include teachers. So it's based on a multi-tiered system. That's the multi-tiered system of support. But all of that really begins in the core or in the classroom. So every student is a part of this process, and we increase supports based on the student's needs. It also then helps us align some of the things that we have in place. For example, we've had a behavior support team or an intervention assistant team in place. Really what this will do is provide a framework to unify all of that and springboard into a much greater level of student support moving forward. So this is actually really fantastic news and really provides a nice framework for us moving forward. I'm not sure the students are going to be so happy with some of the changes though, because there's a little bit of a tidbit in here about inclement weather as well. Weather closures are going to become very rare. Really the driving force behind this will be to transition almost immediately over to a remote situation. So if we had a snowstorm, we would certainly want to secure the learning for the students. Once again, I'm not sure how students would feel about that. Personally, I think it's kind of an interesting thing.
You think hybrid was unpopular?
Yeah.
Wait, take away snow days.
I know. There is a certain magic to snow days here, certainly in North Carolina, that will be kind of lost. But we'll see how that one actually gets implemented. But that is a proposed change. And frankly, I have been in situations with my son going through when we have a fairly major snowfall, where an entire week could be lost as a result of that. This certainly helps mitigate some of that impact. It's a silver lining moment. By the way. I understand.
As long as it's not a board decision on snow days.
I understand. Yes. No, this takes all the guesswork out.
We're going to vote for sledding every time if that's the case.
I understand. Beautiful property here. So yes. Parent-teacher conferences. One of the changes is if they can either be virtual or face-to-face. Frankly, I prefer the face-to-face. However, I have to say, attendance and parents were very pleased. It really is a time saving. So I love the fact that we can actually have both options available to us. The last fairly substantial change came about just in terms of, so in January of this year, Greensboro Academy, along with a number of other North Carolina schools, we went through a federal program monitoring audit and an opportunity to get some feedback about the programming that we offer here at the school, specifically Title I program and also our family engagement policy. Out of that, it was actually a very, not that I really enjoy a good audit, but that being said, it was a really interesting process where we had an opportunity to dig a little deeper into what we were doing. So the change in policy is a direct byproduct of that monitoring visit. This will be for all North Carolina schools. And really, in its essence, what it does is gives us an opportunity to be more systematic and gather input from all of our stakeholders for our Title I program, but also for just our whole family engagement policy. And I think the more information we can get and the more feedback we get from our parent stakeholders, the better off we're going to be in terms of meeting student needs. So this just defines that process moving forward. And there really wasn't any, kind of fine-tuned coming. This is really nothing that's outlandish. It's very similar to what we've done in the past. But this actually just really, once again, streamlines that process in a way that I think will continue to better serve our school. So good stuff all in all. And as an interesting side note, we did in fact pass our audit. So that's always my favorite audits are the ones that we make it. So the last thing I would like to specifically go over is our proposed. I don't know that you have this on this. So I'm thinking these are things. And Melissa, with your, I'm hoping you have a copy of this, but this is the proposed Greensboro Academy 2021 school year master calendar. So, in a general sense, this is really a jump back into what would be a very much a more traditional school year for us. So 5 professional development days leading into our kickoff with students. Let me say that I think that as on the 19th, by the way, so the Thursday, Friday starts, we can ease our way in, get everybody acclimated, focus on those routines and procedures. I will certainly say publicly to the board that I cannot imagine an instance in which we should enter into the 21-22 school year and anything other than 5 days a week in person for our students. So, we need to, and I've said this on more than one occasion, more than one person. I fully anticipate 5 days a week and kind of a more traditional format for the school year. Anyway, moving into the school year though, what we were able to do is, you can see we have parent-teacher conferences built in, a few breaks throughout. The reason we're closing, probably the primary difference between this calendar and others that we've had in the past is in fact an end on June 8th, which is a Wednesday. At least during my time, we've never done this. However, let me say that this is a year of firsts. So I would say that the 8th allows for a much better overall master calendar throughout the year. For example, we proposed a calendar, we had 2 that we let staff vote on. One of them finishing on June 3 and one of them finishing on June 8, which seems to be a relatively minor alteration. But what that essentially means is some of the days that we had in, for example, February 21st and March 18th and 21st were eliminated. Those 3 days would then get us out on the Friday before. But this is a very excellent calendar because it provides some periodic breaks for staff and for students in order to keep our energy level and enthusiasm up throughout an entire school year in a way that keeps that also doesn't necessitate families if they need to take that break or have a window. We built in windows of time as well. So I'm very much a fan of this. The staff was a little bit more mixed actually. I was a little surprised by that, but I think once we had an opportunity to speak about this, and as we're trudging our way through this school year together, and I think we're all feeling it, and I certainly I'll speak for myself. I am weary at this point. I think many of us can empathize with that, and I think this master calendar would allow for a very controlled move through the year. And one of my other primary concerns was making sure that we were set up nicely for state testing, because state testing must take place within the last 10 days of the school year. This calendar really lines up very nicely with that as well. So state testing should not be an issue from within this calendar.
I agree, very impressive calendar.
Yeah.
Totally agree, very impressive calendar.
Well, once again, things need to be true.
Does the calendar need do you need approval for the calendar today? Okay.
Correct. So if the board was in support of this, the master calendar would in fact need board approval. And that could be implemented.
Any question, further questions on the calendar from the board members? I like the calendar. I think in a perfect world, we'd have that full week, that first week in June, just because there are limited, number of weeks for families in general. But I certainly understand and get, I don't want to sacrifice a few days for a week or whatnot, at the end. So I certainly understand that and get that. If we have, I can't remember if it works this way. If we were to have some inclement weather days where, perhaps the remote or virtual option now changes this a little bit, but I guess, is there some cushion in there? The chance of the last day moving from the 8th is probably, it's probably slim.
Yeah, it's virtually nil.
Yeah.
We have ample, so the way that North Carolina handles their tabulation is either by 185 days, which we don't achieve, or 1025 hours, so 1,025 hours total accumulated. We have 180 school days in this calendar. We especially in the middle school, because it's far more time on task there, but we clear the 1025 by something to be 10 days or something like that. So
The instructional hours.
correct, yeah, we clear the number of instructional hours by what would be the equivalent of roughly 10 days or more, actually. I'm sure it's more than 10. So yeah, if we were forced to close, and I always harken back to my first year here, when we had the infamous flood, but we were closed 3 days for that. It did not affect our end date. So I can't imagine the changing.
The internal flood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The internal.
Right. Yeah, I recall that. Okay. Very good. Any questions on either the dashboard, the calendar, or the handbook from anyone?
Actually, I had a question, and
Yes.
I think I couldn't hear clearly, but with the snow days or going remote, and with the calendar, I know there was, and I know we just talked about this, there was always like cushion, padding for the extra so we wouldn't have to make up snow days. So is it the same as the previous years, or did we shorten it since there's that remote option with snow days?
So, Jennifer, it is the same.
Okay. I didn't know if that would affect it since we decided, or since there aren't any more snow days, or it's remote learning. I didn't know if that affected it at all or not.
No, it's an interesting idea, and it wouldn't be, so let me just say, I tend to be a little bit conservative on this end. And I think that next school year specifically, we're going to need every day that we can possibly get.
Okay.
So I would certainly want to secure as many instructional days as we have available to us on this calendar.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
calendar.
And we'll throw it into the action item. Yep. So we will need an approval on that. Thank you. Yeah, I think so too. I think the instructional hours, it's always been kind of a point of, days needed, obviously, for instruction versus the minimal number of instruction hours, and then kind of, sort of playing that a little bit. But I think that, it certainly, again, as a lot of time goes into the days and into the calendar, then I think that's certainly can be supported. So thank you for that. The dashboard always is impressive to me. There's no shortage of information that you can pull from the dashboard in terms of matrix and percentages and everything. So certainly there's no room to say, I think in every way measurable, it's in there. So that's nice to have. My only question quickly on the handbook, there was just the academic excellence piece, and this is just something you'll either know off the top of your head or not, but it mentioned special ed or the support services was revised due to a state issue that was filed against NCDPI. Any knowledge of, I'm just curious. Not necessarily in detail, but I was just curious as to.
It was just something we needed to make, the state needed to make some corrective actions as a result of having some difficulties with things that just weren't clear on the process for parents.
Clear on, oh,
So
so,
it was
okay.
like a corrective action.
Gotcha. Okay. More of a plan and wording, it sounds like maybe than a major issue or something that was, okay, great.
Kind of a revamp on some.
Gotcha. Okay. Very good. All right. Thank you for that. If there aren't any other questions on that, Doug, thanks for reviewing that calendar, the dashboard, and of course the handbook revisions. Appreciate that. Moving along, we're on number 7 now. If you have the packet for the board rep parent board rep report, rather, Dr. Clarita is not able to join us today, but I know there were a couple of items that have been brought up from parents. One being the 4-day versus 5-day in session, and the other one being some questions around air filtration, solutions to things, and of which we've had some discussion obviously on both of those. But and I know you touched on it earlier, Doug, if you don't mind, just on the 4 versus 5 days, the percentages and things were very helpful. But if you can speak to a little bit of that from a practical standpoint, and kind of the leadership's kind of thought around that, and then also if you have anything on air filtration, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So I can tell you this, that there's not a single staff member in the building that would prefer to have students in the building 5 days per week. And we hear it every day. The biggest challenge we face in that, though, is having fully, well, if we look building wide, we still have 27% of our students who are attending in a remote manner. And so, going back to board meetings earlier in the year, when it was, either, all in or all out, those are by far the 2 easiest mediums to instruct from within. So either everyone flew remote or everyone back in the building. And clearly that's not something that's, I'm advocating for. The challenge that we face when it comes to thinking about, 5 days per week as opposed to the 4 is they're essentially twofold. One, that we still have roughly 25% of our students at a grade level that varies from classroom to classroom. But 25% of those students that never set foot in the building. And so we've secured those Wednesdays to try to set aside time so that we can connect with those students that don't set foot in the building and try to find that balance. The other thing that our teachers are certainly finding, and in my work with not only Summerfield Charter Academy, but one of our other sister schools in Charlotte, it's just a very laborious process for teachers to adapt in-person materials into the virtual setting, and then be able to kind of unify that into a whole. So it's I don't know that I would say twice the work, but it's certainly of normal schooling, if you will, but it certainly is something akin to that. We've become better with it as well. I think I would be remiss if I didn't say that I think that the teachers here at Greensboro Academy feel very strongly that the Wednesdays are their opportunity to connect with the virtual students, and also their opportunity to try to get a semblance of the ability to make that transition or translation of the material that is in person into that digital format. And so it allows for them to be able to do that. So those are the kind of the crux of the issue. Did you add anything else? Is there anything else you'd like to add? Do you mind?
Absolutely.
I think that our teachers right now, our teachers this year have done a good job all year educating both at home and in school. And essentially, the hybrid model is asking them to really do 2 jobs. They're doing double the work. So if you walk into one of these classrooms and you see what these teachers are doing, it's amazing. they have 20 kids, 15 to 20 kids sitting in the room and like 10 kids online. And they're doing all of those things at one time. So like I said, essentially, I feel like they're doing 2 jobs, and that's okay, and they're good at it. They've got a lot of practice, and they work really hard. Wednesdays is very precious to them, for the remote students to be able to connect with them when they don't ever get to see them in person, and they have all the other kids in person now that they can connect with. But also, it gives them some sanity. They have an amazing amount of planning and grading and checking of attendance and all of those good things. It's a tremendous amount of work. And I think the cost would outweigh the benefit, given how many days we still have left. I think it would be a disservice to our teachers, as much as they would love to have them here 5 days a week. Of course, we understand routine, we understand things that are difficult for families that are working, completely understand that. But given the progress that we've made this far and how hard they have worked and the challenges of fully remote, hybrid, on their own, back and forth, I believe staying 4 days a week is definitely the way to go.
Thank you.
I would just second everything that Mrs. Dewey said. I know that I think my teachers in my hall are the best anywhere, and even they are struggling. And I think that they're doing the very best. I mean, they're still the best, but they are really using Wednesdays to connect with those kids that are out, but they're really using Wednesdays to do additional work that would not be what they would normally be doing. They're converting a lot of things to an electronic version. They're doing that all from scratch because that's brand new to them this year. Work is being submitted online, so the way that they're grading, the way that they're entering grades, the communication, small group instruction for in-person versus those that are at home to try and reach individuals, all looks very different and requires a lot of additional work, planning, resources that they're really having to create from scratch. And so I think the level of what they're doing, trying to continue to be the best that they are, really necessitates that time that is provided on Wednesdays for them to continue to be at the quality and the level that they are providing, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So,
I just want to say thank you for that, because you guys just enlightened me, just gave me a whole new understanding. That was needed, that was necessary. Thank you so much. It was good to hear. It gave me a vision of, the process and also the struggle. So, yeah.
I agree. I agree, Tiffany. I'll say just, Doug, real quick, if I may, certainly appreciate those comments. You guys have always done a great job of representing and being a voice for the teachers, on your halls, and that's fantastic. Thank you for doing that. I think that, as I think through the challenges in a normal year that our model just has always seemed to be, obviously with no teacher assistants and no, relying heavily on parents, which we weren't able to do this year. The number of the kids in the classroom, it was a tough. I'm telling you what you already know. Tough job last year and the year before and the year before that. You throw this in on top, and it's beyond tough. And so I can completely get that. I understand that, sometimes I feel like what happens outside of our school and in other schools, I read it, I see it, have dialogue with people outside, and understand that. I think it's not always a good apples to apples comparison, I think. And so that's one thing I think we have to keep in mind with that. Thank you for your thoughts on that.
Yes, indeed.
thank you. Well, and I think that, let me just say that, there are schools, our percentage of students in fully remote, the sweet spot would be 33%, right? Because then we would have made made some moves at some lower grade levels to have a remote-only teacher and re-roster. Unfortunately, we would unbalance towards having too many students in the building. If I would be the first one to say that if we could have re-rostered in a way that was at least relatively balanced, 5 days a week would have not been anything to think twice about.
Yeah.
And because we're not able to, it has become one of those challenges. And yet, we also say, you know, one of the injustices of this whole COVID-19 pandemic, you know, certainly the work that the staff has had to go through, but there's also a family piece to this as well. I cannot be lost it. This is, you know, there's hardships, plenty of hardships to go around. And the fact that students can have not been able to attend school 5 days a week is one of those hardships.
Well, I guess I would add that I completely agree with that, and I completely understand. It's very difficult for those parents to only have 4 days and not have that fifth day. I have a child who really needs to be in school tremendously from that. But I do think that the 5 days, I think that what would be provided would suffer.
Sure.
As a
Sure.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense. But I completely understand as a parent. I see that.
Absolutely.
Totally does. And you mentioned the cost versus the reward or something, and that's something that's tangible to a certain degree that we have to be in consideration of. And so not an easy decision, but great information. Jennifer, anything from you? Any questions on that at all?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and then the other question was, that had come up was one of air filtration. And I think this is specifically units within the classrooms. I've heard from more than one parent about this topic. So it's an interesting thing to look at. I've actually spent more time than I would have ever thought looking up air filtration units and limited data on, you know, whether or not that would be effective for specifically COVID-19. However, plenty of data that would say that, you know, having air refresh cycles is a good thing. And so anything that can be done to maximize air refresh cycles within the building or within an individual classroom and, you know, aids the overall health of everyone. I can't imagine it's a bad thing, if you will. I don't know that it would necessarily impact specifically COVID-19. But then again, we really don't know. As far as I know, I've actually asked around. I don't know that there's any schools that have have had purchased individual units at this point. So I will continue to see if I can get some data on that one. What I can say is one of the things I'm fairly happy about is the fact that Greensboro Academy, this was probably 2 or 3 years ago now, had new HVAC units installed. And so that is actually working in our favor right now. Those are, you know, pretty robust units that were recently upgraded. So from a refresh cycle overall, I think we're pretty good and certainly better than we would have been with 20-year-old units prior to that. No doubt about it. So we're pleased with that. I have some ideas that, you know, might be able to kind of help with the filtration in the classroom, but you know, it's an interesting one. And now I think the issue becomes more pressing when we have classrooms with 20, 22 students in a class, along with the teacher. And that's a lot of folks breathing the same air for, you know, middle school, it's 90 minutes. And for other groups, it's even longer than that. Yeah. So it's a worthy question to ask.
Sure. Thank you for that. I think this board has always kind of had the stance that we stand willing and ready to invest in that to a degree that you know, it is relatively significant. Just want to make sure that, you know, what we do put into and invest in, that we're getting the benefit from. And I think that's the hard piece of this, to know what really is impactful or is not. And I just don't know. I haven't seen or read enough, and I've tried to look into it as well, and just haven't seen enough that is substantial benefit, you know, from them. There may be, and that may change. And again, we stand ready, but I just haven't personally haven't seen that yet. So we'll see. I think that my feeling is that that data is just not out there yet, and maybe it will be really soon, and we'll keep an eye out for that. But definitely want to do, if it's something that helps and makes sense, again, we want to act on it as soon as necessary. So thank you for that. All right. Thank you for everyone who's hung with us to this point. I think we'll be able to move through the discussion items relatively quickly, given that some of them we've already discussed and given the nature of these. So again, appreciate everyone's patience. Moving into discussion items, number one, the evaluations we've talked about, we're kicking down the road a month or two, so we will cover those soon. The board satisfaction survey, Melissa, if I understand correctly, just really need a reminder on that to board members if you haven't done that yet. I think we were sent the link for that, and I believe April 30th is the date that they would like those back by. Melissa, is that correct?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. The 2021 National Charter School Conference, June 20th through 23rd, I believe, if I wasn't in move up math, but I think if I did that correctly, $500 maybe for allocation on that if everyone were to attend. And I think the action item to approve today is just to approve the funds. And then obviously if they go unused, it goes back in the pot. But if everyone were to go, it's $500 and or not to go, but to attend virtually. And so unless I'm missing something else on that, on the funding for that, Melissa, anything from you?
Nope, that's it. Just 125 per person. That's correct.
Okay. All right, great. And I have that down under the action items that we'll get to shortly. The parent-student handbook covered very well by Principal Howard. I don't think there's anything else to be discussed on that. If there is, please speak up. And then finally, also in addition, 8E is the proposed 2021 board calendar, which I don't believe needs a vote today. I think we're going to vote on that next meeting, but it's basically the same time frame. Jennifer and Tiffany, if anybody can do that or has issues with that, it's the second Tuesday of every month, 4 p.m. is the way we've always had it. Seems to work well for everyone. I didn't see any holiday being a Tuesday. There's generally not any issues with holidays or spring breaks or things with that would cause us to have to move a date. So that's still good with everyone. We'll stick with that, and then if something does come up, let me know. We've got till next board meeting to approve that. Again, second Tuesday of every month at 4 p.m. for the board calendar. All right. We'll move into the action items. I will try to articulate here a couple of the additional action items. Melissa, if I'm jumping the gun or skip something, please jump right in. But I believe we're set with the action items. A and B are the two approvals for the board meeting minutes for March 9 and March 26. We have the approval for the handbook, 2021 parent-student handbook that we just reviewed. Action item D is approval for the contract to audit Plant Moran. I believe the fee was just shy of $10,000, which is a good fee for the size organization we are and what they provide and the level of audit they provide. So that is part of the approval. We've discussed that in previous board meetings. Approval for the board funds for the 2021 Charter School Conference to be $500 is 9E. And then we'll add action item F. Mr. Howard, if you'll follow with me on this to make sure I capture correctly, I believe F, we will have approval to allow 5th and 8th grade students enter the school on May 19th and allow all in-person students access to the school building on May 26th. That's correct. And then finally, action item G is our booster request for funding up to $4,000 for the field day on the 26th of May, and then up to $1,000 for the 8th grade dance. So if there aren't any questions on those action items, I will make a motion to approve. Yes, sorry.
I'm sorry. Can we add the school calendar?
Oh, yes. Very good. Thank you. My apologies on that.
That's okay. You're doing great.
Tiffany was supposed to remind me of that. I'm going to blame her.
She did,
I'm
she
just-
did. It was just her mask. You couldn't
I'm
see.
just kidding. She was not, she actually did remind me of that and I still left it off. Sorry about that. Let's see if I can get my alphabet here. E, F, G, H. Action item H. We're all the way down. We're going to run out of letters. Action item H is approval of the 21-22 school year calendar as presented. So I will make a motion to approve action items A through H. Is there a,
Second.
we have a motion and a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And the motion passes. Thank you so much. All right, public comment. Melissa, forgive me, I'm not able to see just yet who we have on. Our parent who was here had to leave a little early, but we'll open it up for public comment if you have anyone on the line, Melissa.
We're good to go over here. It's Jennifer and I.
It's just
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, we do have Holly Winslow for a comment.
As a parent, I just wanted to speak to the Wednesday thing. Just to be clear, my child is at home all the time. That's been for multiple reasons. The main one being that my high schooler is back in school. We were not comfortable with the mixing of the two different locations and lack of vaccines and all that kind of stuff. Plus, she's doing fine. She's in school. She's capable of learning on her own. That Wednesday is like a breath of fresh air. Learning at home is all those difficult things that everybody says that it is. For her to sit behind the computer all day, to focus all day on that. On Wednesday, when she has a little bit more of that one-on-one, ask a question. She doesn't have to sit as long, but she has time to get her work done. It makes what seems like an extra very long week a wee bit shorter. I do too understand the strain of that Wednesday off on parents, but for those small percentage of students that are still learning remotely, which I realize is my choice. But it's a difficult thing, to sit behind a computer all day. And she is disconnected from the things that happen in the classroom. So there is a bit of that connection that does happen on Wednesdays. So it's an unusual day that she does look forward to.
Good. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for
Holly.
sharing.
Yes, thank you for that. All right, board member comments. Jennifer, any comments, board member comments?
I don't have any at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Tiffany?
I got this done. Okay, I had to get it out. That's it.
Tiffany's going to keep Doug from going anywhere.
I said, get it out. Oh my God. I'm still processing this thing. But no, other than that, I just.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, same here. I mean, I think again, more to come on that, but sincere thank you, Doug, for your leadership and the progress the last 8 years. Not only the progress, just the challenges that come with this, just sort of in general. Certainly impactful to kids' lives, literally, and that's kind of cool. Not everybody can say that about their job. I can't really say that about mine, but you can, and you guys can. The leadership, the deans, the teachers, literally impact human lives from a very young age, and something to remember all the way through the rest of their life. So thank you for that.
And just to add, that was my first experience when I first came on the board. You remember you took me on a tour, and what really captured my heart was the kids just ran up to you and how they embraced you, how it was like, oh my God, it was so elated. And I'm like, oh my God, he has to be phenomenal. And then, of course, I sometimes I just can't find any words to say. They're going to gain an amazing treasure wherever you go. But we're here at Greensboro Academy, my God, from Zion. It's going to be an interesting transition, I just say.
When
Yes.
Doug, he'll be at the next board meeting, and I mean, we have a
That's
couple
right.
more board meetings, right, before?
So at least the next board meeting. Yeah, at least the next board meeting. So we'll have the dunking booth set up for that one. as well as some shaving cream and other things that he'll look different when he walks out the door. That's right. That's right. Yes.
Here.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I will announce the meeting adjourned. Thank you so much, Melissa, Jennifer, everybody for attending and being patient through this meeting. Lot to cover, but thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Thank you
Meeting
all.
adjourned.
Hi, Tiffany. Bye, Jennifer.
Bye.
Thank you.